emergency.
Hi, someone just got shot in the parking lot of the Gables Park 17.
We don't see murders like this very often in Dallas, Texas.
I don't know what happened.
It was pretty shocking.
How did this young, beautiful pediatric dentist come to be murdered in the safe, gated parking garage of the building where she lived? We have two suspects, and they're both obviously lying.
I had to find concrete evidence to go along with the tidbits of truth they provided. Things didn't happen the way that they said that it happened.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Dallas, Texas, heart of the Lone Star State, and a major hub for young professionals looking to kickstart their careers.
Dallas is a Texas city of opportunity. It's got 41 colleges. It attracts a young crowd, people who are looking to get their careers going, to find their place in the world.
Like any city with a lot of wealth and a lot of contrast between wealth and poverty, there's a lot of crime. There are certainly parts of town where you don't want to wander around alone, but sometimes even being in the right part of town can be dangerous.
At 7:44 on the night of September 2nd, Dallas police receive a 911 call.
Emergency.
Hi, someone just got shot in the parking lot of the Gables Park 17.
The caller exits the elevator, going to the parking garage. He gets to the parking level.
All I heard was screaming and then a loud pop, and then I saw her laying on the floor.
She sees a female laying in a pool of blood.
And there was blood coming out of her neck, and her bones on the floor, her car door is open. I don't know what happened.
He sees a black Jeep drive past him very fast.
I think it was a black Jeep Cherokee.
He's very frightened, and he decides to run to his car and get out.
Detective Eric Barnes responds to the call. He's a 3-year veteran of the Dallas Homicide Unit.
When I walk into the crime scene, I see a white Toyota Camry, and I see a female victim laying next to the white Toyota Camry in a pool of blood. The victim is face up, and it appears that she's in a medical profession because she's wearing scrubs. So that made me think that it might have been a robbery.
Police find no identification on the victim, so they run the plates on the nearby white Camry, hoping its registration reveals her name.
The victim is named Kendra Hatcher. She's a pediatric dentist, and she's 35 years old.
Dr. Kendra Hatcher lived in Parkdale's upscale 27-story condo above the garage. It appears that she had just arrived home when she was killed.
We see a fire cartridge casing inside Dr. Hatcher's vehicle. We collect the casing and send it off to the firearms examination team to determine if that firearm was used in another crime. Very close to her body is a flattened bullet fragment that appeared to be fired from close range, and based on the hit in the concrete, the bullet just kind of fragmented and broke apart. Next to the fragment is a magazine that appeared to fall out of a handgun, and it looked like it was a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson magazine. She had one wound at the back of her head and another wound directly underneath her chin. In combination with the flattened round that was fired, it appeared that she was shot in the top of the head and that the bullet came out through her chin and then struck the pavement at close range.
Detectives now have enough evidence to form their first impression of what may have happened.
I think she had just opened her car door up and she was gathering her things, and whenever she turned around to close her car door, I think that's when she saw the shooter. Once the killer approached at gunpoint, I think she kind of cowered down and kind of, in an attempt to give up and say, hey, whatever you want, take it. And by kneeling down, the shooter shot her from behind with one shot. And the shooter left with the victim's purse. I see about 175 to 200 murders a year in Dallas, Texas. We don't see murders like this very often. This was a precise shot, and it was meant to kill. This just doesn't happen in uptown Dallas. It doesn't happen to people like Dr. Hatcher.
To solve the murder, Detective Barnes must piece together the last 24 hours of Dr. Kendra Hatcher's life.
At this point in the investigation, I have a witness that saw a vehicle at the time of the murder. It's 7:44 p.m., but that's it.
Detectives hope security cameras may have captured what happened before the dentist was attacked.
With it being a newer building, I thought the cameras would be pretty modern, and that we may get a good glimpse of our suspect and also our suspect vehicle. When we looked at the surveillance video, we were able to determine that a black Jeep pulls into the parking garage and sits there waiting on our victim. While the Jeep is waiting, we get a good angle of the driver, and it looks like you can definitely tell it's a female. 29 minutes later, Dr. Hatcher arrived into a secure area of the parking garage and parked in our parking spot. In the surveillance video, you see a silhouette walk over towards her vehicle. We see the shooter get out of the car, so he had to be lying down in the back seat because he got out and he was not seen on any other footage. At 7:42 p.m., the actual confrontation and murder takes place, even though you can't see it. And then the shooter runs back to the vehicle, and the Jeep takes off.
Detective Barnes now knows there are two perpetrators involved. A female driver and a male shooter.
From what I've seen on the footage now, it was very obvious to me that this wasn't just a crime of opportunity. There was plenty of people that they could have robbed, but they were seeking out Dr. Hatcher, and it was intentional. The shooter shot her from behind with one shot.
Now, with all the information in hand, Detective Barnes steels himself for the worst part of his job, reaching out to the victim's parents.
Calling Dr. Hatcher's family was very difficult. I could tell that this was the last call that they were expecting to get.
Through tears, Kendra's mom explains that her daughter wasn't just successful, she was also generous.
Kendra Hatcher worked at Smile Zone, which provided free dental care for some who couldn't afford it. It was in a not exactly great part of town, but she was somebody who gave of herself to her patients, her pediatric patients, who loved her. She had a way with children, somebody at the top of her young life, at the top of her game.
Kendra's mom was very torn apart, and she had a hard time making sense out of why someone would want to do this to Kendra.
Detectives have the same question. Why was Kendra Hatcher gunned down in her garage? Police believe the unidentified driver of the black Jeep has the answer. So they release a video still of her to the media, hoping someone from the public recognizes her and comes forward.
Kendra's murder throws Dallas media into a frenzy of coverage. Not only the local media, but national media flocks to town. How did this young, beautiful pediatric dentist come to be murdered in the safe, gated parking garage of the building where she lived?
Detective Barnes doesn't have to look far for his first lead. Less than 24 hours after Kendra Hatcher's murder, her brother Neil steps forward to offer assistance.
Neil shifted into protector mode. Someone did something very bad to his sister, and he wanted to make sure that he helped us with finding out everything we could find out. And Kendra's brother thinks it's very important that we speak with.
Ricardo Peniagua is an up-and-coming dermatologist. He and Kendra have been dating for about 6 months.
The vast number of female homicides in the United States involve intimate partners, whether current or former. So investigators always prioritize a boyfriend, husband, girlfriend, lover.
Dr. Ricardo Peniagua says he wants to help in any way he can, but his behavior tells investigators something different.
Ricardo was acting very nervous and just very anxious. And it was an immediate sign to me that, I needed to dig a little deeper to find out what was going on with him and, what he was doing during the time of the murder.
So Detective Barnes decides to record the interview, but the doctor objects.
He is really concerned about recording the interview, and he didn't want me to look at his cell phone. That was pretty suspicious to me. Most people that are involved in crimes don't want the police looking through their phone.
Dr. Richard Peniagua is reluctant to have police look at his cell phone, which begs the question, what is he trying to hide? Why would he not volunteer willingly all the information he has to try and solve this homicide?
Detectives wonder if Dr. Peniagua is responsible for his girlfriend's murder.
Could this guy kill someone that he was so in love with?
A day after 35-year-old dentist Kendra Hatcher is gunned down in her parking garage, detectives suspect her boyfriend, Dr. Ricardo Peniagua, may be responsible.
Ricardo's behavior is pretty suspicious. He doesn't want to turn over his phone. The police have questions for him. Could he really have killed Dr. Hatcher and his girlfriend?
I really need Ricardo to cooperate. And at this point in the case, I basically had a matter-of-fact conversation with him, letting him know where the investigation stood and that the last thing that he wanted was not to cooperate.
Ricardo reluctantly agrees to be recorded so Barnes can start the interview.
Dr. Peniagua tells me that him and Kendra fell in love pretty fast. They had a deep chemistry with each other, and it was a relationship that just kind of took flight as soon as they started dating.
On the same day Kendra was killed, the couple was prepping for a trip.
They were planning on going on a vacation the very next day to Cancun. Kendra was on her way home from work, and she stopped by a friend's house to pick up an underwater camera to take on their vacation.
25 minutes later, Ricardo pings her again.
Ricardo was texting her, trying to figure out what time she thought she would be home so they could go out and have a
Show up for dinner. Instead, he grabbed takeout at a place around the corner from her building.
9 minutes later, Dr. Peniagua is standing outside a parking garage with takeout food, and he's trying to get in contact with Dr. Hatcher, but she doesn't answer his call. He told me that he sees police cars and fire trucks surrounding the building, and he was clueless as to anything happening to her. I think my true suspicion with him was the location. Just seemed really convenient that he would be at the location just a few feet away from where she was murdered, during the time she was murdered.
Is Kendra Hatcher's boyfriend telling the truth? Or has he contrived an alibi to explain his presence at the crime scene? Investigators need Ricardo's phone to confirm his story.
I get Ricardo to hand over his cell phone by letting him know that if he doesn't cooperate, it's just going to stall the investigation.
Ricardo's texts with Kendra provide a snapshot of her activities on the day she was killed. In the morning, she's at a tanning booth, then works from 1 to 7 p.m. At 7:18, she picks up the underwater camera for their upcoming vacation. Just as Ricardo had said.
7:35 p.m., Ricardo received his last text from Kendra. She had left work, and she had picked up the underwater camera, and she was on her way to the apartment. After 7:55 p.m., Ricardo is returning back to the apartment building with takeout food. That's when he sees police cars and fire trucks surrounding the building. He decides to send Kendra a text message to let her know that she can't park at that spot, and she never responds.
The text confirmed Ricardo's last messages with Kendra. But Detective Barnes still needs to corroborate Ricardo's alibi with one more source.
We checked with the restaurant. Ricardo's alibi checked out.
With his alibi confirmed, detectives are certain that even though Ricardo was outside the crime scene just after Kendra was shot, he could not have been the shooter.
At this point in the investigation, Ricardo's not looking like the person that I believe to kill Kendra Hatcher. He was just a hurt boyfriend, and he was dealing with the loss of someone close to him.
Kendra's grieving boyfriend is free to go, and the investigation is back to square one. But not for long.
So the next day after the meeting,
Jose Luis Ortiz, who's a mechanic in the Dallas area, and Jose recognizes his Jeep from the still photograph we released to the news on the day prior. Jose tells us that he let a friend of his borrow his Jeep the day before. Jose identified his friend as Brenda Delgado. Jose said that he grew up with Brenda, and Jose's sister and Brenda were best friends.
When police ran a background check on Brenda Delgado, Her driver's license picture appears to match the driver.
Brenda Delgado was of Mexican descent. She had moved with her family to Dallas for a better life. She was going to dental hygiene school, and by all accounts, she was good at it.
Jose loaned his vehicle to Brenda, and he continued to work at his mechanic shop for most of the day. And that evening, he met Brenda to have dinner at a nearby restaurant. We bring Brenda Delgado in for questioning, and as soon as I meet her, my first impression of Brenda is she's very mild, meek-mannered, and she appears to be very calm considering that she's at the Dallas Police Headquarters being questioned on a homicide. Brenda told me that her car was overheating, so she decided to take it to her friend's mechanic shop, and she asked to borrow his Jeep because she had to study for her finals. I asked her, how does this Jeep end up in the parking garage during the time of the murder? More importantly, who's driving it?
She says, yeah, I had the Jeep, but I loaned it to my friend Crystal Cortez, who needed it to take her son to school the next day. Brenda says she has no idea what Crystal did with the vehicle that night, but she returned it the next day.
I asked Brenda what she was doing around 7:44 p.m. during the time of the murder. Brenda tells me that she's having dinner at a nearby restaurant with Jose, which matches his story. Brenda then offered to provide me with proof that she was at the restaurant, and she opens up her purse and hands me a receipt from her dinner at the time of the murder. There was nothing unbelievable about her story. Her alibi checked out.
Closer inspection of the surveillance video confirms it's not Brenda behind the wheel.
So her alibi checks out. She's let go. So now the hammer comes down on Crystal Cortez because she is tied to that car and the murder scene.
At this point, I need to speak with Crystal to figure out what she was doing in the parking garage.
Brenda provides a phone number and a home address for Crystal Cortez.
I ran a criminal check on Crystal, and it came back clear she had no criminal history. So now we bring Crystal in.
Crystal is 23 years old. She has a 6-year-old son, and she lives at home with her grandmother. She's a single mom. She's struggling financially.
When I first meet Crystal, I seem to be bothered that she's being questioned about a murder. I asked Crystal if she was anywhere near the parking garage in question. Crystal told me that she was passing through the downtown area looking for a parking spot. She wanted to park in that specific parking garage because she wanted to take her son to go play at a nearby park. Now I've been able to physically get her to admit that she was in the parking garage and inside the same vehicle that we believe was used in the murder.
Crystal Cortez admits she drove into that garage, but nothing else in her story seems to check out.
I believe I was getting about 10% truth from her because the surveillance video showed that the shooter got out of the back seat of the car that she was driving. There was no 6-year-old kid in that car. And now I know that she's lying.
Dallas police believe 23-year-old single mother Crystal Cortez is lying about not being the getaway driver for a murderer. The gunman is seen leaving Crystal's black Jeep seconds before he shoots Dr. Kendra Hatcher in her parking garage.
So I start challenging Crystal's stories, who specifically got out of her car inside the parking garage.
Crystal gives a surprising answer.
Crystal claims that she was carjacked, which is not entirely unheard of in Dallas.
Crystal told me that she was at a light prior to entering the parking garage, and someone forced their way into her vehicle at gunpoint and told her to drive to the parking garage.
She claims it was Kendra Hatcher's killer, and he threatened to kill Crystal too if she didn't comply. It's a terrifying story, but Detective Barnes isn't convinced.
We do have carjackings that occur in the city, but they're normally not carjackings for older model Jeep Cherokees. And after looking at the surveillance footage, Crystal had every option to drive away as soon as the shooter got out of the vehicle. But she didn't drive away. She waited for him to get back in. And carjackings just don't happen like that.
Detective Barnes needs to find a way to get Crystal to tell the truth.
Police are limited in what they can do. How can we compel this person to provide information that's going to be helpful, and maybe there's something in it for them if they do?
I reminded her that she didn't want to look like a liar. and that telling the truth was very important to her, and it was very important to how the rest of the night was going to play out. I just kind of used the surveillance footage to play against her story and kind of refresh her memory that things didn't happen the way that you said that it happened. And so she slowly started giving little nuggets of truth. Crystal has basically put herself in the middle of a murder, and she's an
With Crystal now facing a possible death sentence in Texas, she offers details on the shooter in the hopes for leniency.
Crystal describes him being a black male, and she describes his hair as being dreadlocks, and that his name is Lamar.
Crystal claims she doesn't know Lamar's last name or his whereabouts, so detectives look to her phone to confirm her story.
We got a search warrant for Crystal's phone. Our hopes were that we may be able to find numbers to link her phone back to the gunman's phone.
As they search, one recurring phone number stands out.
We were finally able to locate a number that we think belonged to the gunman.
They think they have the right phone number, but now they need to track it to the person to whom it belongs. So they bring in the FBI.
Dallas FBI Task Force Detective Lee Thompson is assigned to assist the investigation.
Detective Barnes secured a warrant for the location of the phone number in question. We are tracking the phone in the southern part of Dallas to an apartment complex there. You're trying to locate someone that you just have a vague description of, and you're looking for the movement of the phone to follow and hope the phone is in the possession of your suspect.
Investigators stake out the apartment complex where the suspect's phone is located.
We're sitting at the apartment complex. There's 3 or 4 of us that have it surrounded, and we're waiting on the phone to move. We're there for maybe an hour before the phone started moving. It just so happened I'm in the spot where the suspect walks out of the building. He gets into the vehicle and leaves the apartment complex, so we follow him in and out of traffic, trying to keep up with him.
We feel pretty good in our chances in getting this car stopped because we think that our shooter is going to be in the car with the cell phone.
The team tracks the suspected killer to a second North Dallas parking lot.
Officer Thompson reached out to me and said, "Hey, I think we have the shooter and also his cell phone. Do you mind calling his cell phone to see if it matches the number that we're pinging?" I dialed the number, and it rang.
When the suspect answers, Detective Barnes hangs up, then gives the green light to arrest Lamar, uncertain if he's armed.
We converge on his vehicle and try to get some identification from him and the others. The suspect gives us a bogus name.
Investigators find no weapons on him, but they do find a driver's license with the suspect's real name.
He's transported back to Dallas Police Headquarters, where Detective Barnes then begins the interview.
Christopher denies having any involvement in a murder. He denied knowing Crystal or Brenda, and he also seems like he could care less about being questioned about a murder.
Christopher Love is a small-time drug dealer. He's been in and out of prison and jail a number of times. Assault, drug dealing, various other violent crimes. He's not a stand-up guy.
Dallas police can't hold him since his warrants are from outside Texas.
Even though we felt stronger and stronger about him being a suspect, we just didn't have enough information at that time to arrest him. So we decided to shift the focus and go search his car at the auto pound.
His vehicle had just all kinds of things inside. It was just a mess. But nothing was found at that time.
With no evidence to go on, it looks like investigators' prime suspect might walk. But then help comes from an unexpected source.
The ATF had one of their canines at Dallas Police Headquarters, and he was demonstrating how the dog searched for explosives or firearms, and someone suggested that the dog be used to search the vehicle that the possible suspect was driving.
It's game on now.
Without evidence, Dallas police will have to release their prime suspect for the murder of 35-year-old dentist Kendra Hatcher. So investigators bring in powerful help to sniff out possible evidence from the suspect's car.
We had never worked with this handler before. We'd never worked with a K9, and it was a fairly new process to us having a K9 that could help with searching a vehicle. And the K9 was introduced to do a sniff to see if he could actually smell the gunpowder linked to the firearm or to the ammunition inside the firearm. And once the dog locked in and got focused, he gave the signal that there's a firearm in this vehicle.
The dog detected something. There was a loose panel on the right side of the console, and upon pulling on the panel, a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson handgun was located.
It's an incredible discovery, but only if it's the actual murder weapon used to kill Kendra Hatcher.
We're pretty excited that we found the firearm. So we sent it off to the firearms examiner to be tested to determine if this same type of weapon was the exact weapon that was used.
There's a lot riding on the firearm examiner's report. If it's not the gun, then they're back at square zero.
The firearms examiner called back. Not only was the casing that we found at the crime scene recovered, we were able to 100% say that the firearm we recovered was the firearm used to kill Kendra Hatcher.
Without a doubt, it's the most important find of the case.
When I presented Christopher with a picture of the firearm, his body posture changed, his head dropped, and he looked defeated. He admitted to being present for the murder in the parking garage.
Christopher Love admits he was there, but he's adamant he wasn't the one who pulled the trigger.
Despite having the gun in his possession, Christopher Love says, "No, I didn't shoot her. That was the getaway driver, Crystal."
He says that there was a robbery gone wrong. He was supposed to just take Dr. Hatcher's ID in her purse. And he gets out of the vehicle to approach to get her purse.
But Kendra refused to give up her purse. And as he was trying to get that away from her, Crystal backed the Jeep up and then shot Kendra. It was Crystal who was the trigger man.
Detective Barnes isn't sold. Evidence from the crime scene shows that Dr. Hatcher was shot from behind at close range. Not by Crystal from a moving car, as Lamar attests.
It was impossible for Crystal to be reversing in a vehicle and firing out the window in order to kill her. But it was just impossible. I pressed him on it, and he asked for a lawyer. And so that was the end of the interview.
Like the getaway driver Crystal Cortez, Christopher Love is charged with murder. But to prove the case against them, one glaring question remains. Why would they want to kill Dr. Hatcher?
We have two suspects. They both are tied to the crime, and they're both obviously lying. And if you look at it real hard, neither one of them really has a motive.
But as a Dallas police officer arrives to transport Christopher Love to lockup, he has a change of heart and asks for Detective Barnes.
I went back to my desk to start doing the paperwork, and he knocks on the door and wants to talk again. Like he just wants to ask me one question. And so I read him his Miranda warning again, reinitiate the interview, and he wants to ask me, why do we let her go?
Since Crystal is now locked up, Detective Barnes asks him if there's a third unidentified suspect.
There is no honor among thieves, and when properly stoked by a good interviewer in terms of letting the offender know that there's people who got away with it, and he's left holding the bag. That can be a strong motivator.
The potential shooter wants to know why another suspect has been released. Maybe she's provided information about him. Maybe we can use anxiety about the information that she has shared to...
Christopher Love offers the name of an alleged third suspect.
He said that he was only involved in this because Brenda Delgado wanted this done to Dr. Hatcher.
Brenda Delgado was the woman who loaned the Jeep to Crystal. Brenda was also questioned earlier by police, but her alibi of dining while the murder occurred checked out.
Christopher tells the police that she offered him $3,000 and all the drugs he could use for him to shoot and kill Kendra.
Christopher Love now confesses to his role in the murder.
Brenda and Crystal picked Christopher up at 10:30 the morning of the murder.
They drop Brenda back at her home.
I and then Crystal and Christopher tailed Kendra Hatcher around from her work and eventually back to where she lived.
They arrived early at Kendra's parking garage to wait until the beloved dentist showed up.
And then that's when the crime occurs.
So we know what happened. We know who was involved. We just don't know why. We need a motive for Brenda Delgado.
With no clear motive to connect Brenda to the murder, all Barnes has is the word of two criminals.
Christopher Love and Crystal Cortez, they're both pathological liars. They came in and they lied for hours and hours during the interrogation, and their word alone is no good. Like, it's not enough to put Brenda in jail. So I had to find concrete evidence to go along with the tidbits of truth they provided.
Then Kendra Hatcher's boyfriend, Dr. Ricardo Peniagua, calls police with a stunning claim.
Dr. Peniagua, he says that he's looking at this grainy still photo on the evening news of a brunette driving a dark-colored Jeep Cherokee. He tells me that's Brenda Delgado.
Ricardo says he knows Brenda Delgado. But Detective Barnes knows Ricardo's mistaken about who's driving the Jeep.
Brenda and Crystal both are very similar in their physical appearance. They both are brunettes. They both have olive-colored skin. There are some similarities between the two, so I don't think he was giving me the wrong name. I just think that Ricardo was confused.
But what the doctor tells police next is a bombshell. Brenda Delgado is his ex-girlfriend.
It was pretty shocking that she was his ex-girlfriend. Dr. Peniagua told me that they had a long-term relationship and they dated for about 2 years prior to him meeting Kendra. Brenda wanted to get married, and the relationship just didn't work out. Dr. Ricardo Peniagua ended up broke.
She says, I don't bear any ill will to Ricardo. He wasn't that big a deal to me. And when I found out he was dating someone else, I wished him well, and I certainly wouldn't want to kill anybody. She even called Ricardo to offer her condolences at the time of the murder.
It was very challenging because I felt Brenda was involved. I just didn't have the evidence to prove it, so I had to let her go.
They know they're getting close, they know she's involved, but they don't have enough to charge her. What they don't have is a motive. Why would Brenda Delgado want Dr. Kendra Hatcher killed?
Four weeks after 35-year-old Dallas dentist Kendra Hatcher is gunned down inside her parking garage, police have arrested 2 people responsible. Caught on the garage surveillance cameras, the driver, 23-year-old Crystal Cortez, and the shooter, 31-year-old Christopher Love. Christopher Love also fingers a third suspect as the mastermind, 31-year-old Brenda Delgado. But Brenda claims she's innocent.
At this point, the police feel that Brenda is lying, but they don't have any real evidence that points to her being involved in the crime. So the next thing the police do, they take a deep dive into her life.
I need to figure out who the real Brenda is, the person that she was trying to conceal. I found high school friends, college classmates, also ex-employees that worked side by side with Brenda.
What Detective Barnes discovers doesn't match Brenda's earlier statements. She said her breakup with Dr. Ricardo Peniagua was no big deal, but Brenda's friends and colleagues say that's not true.
They all said the same thing. Brenda had a hard time dealing with the breakup with Ricardo.
When he started dating Kendra Hatcher, she was devastated. She moved from Ricardo's luxurious upscale apartment to a 1-bedroom place near downtown Dallas. They discovered that Brenda Delgado was cyber-stalking her ex, Ricardo.
She had an app that tracked Ricky's phone. She had keys to his house. She had log on to his iCloud account. So she was able to follow what he was doing, what he was saying, who he was seeing, able to keep track of his life.
Brenda went through an extreme phase of jealousy. What she saw in Kendra, with her career, with their future, with Ricardo, was everything Brenda envisioned for herself.
She becomes obsessed with removing Kendra from Ricardo's life. She starts asking friends and family members if they or anyone they know can help her kill someone.
I spoke with several people that Brenda solicited their help to help her eliminate Kendra Hatcher. So now I have a motive for Brenda Delgado killing Kendra Hatcher. Jealousy caused her to snap.
To find that person that she was looking for. $500 is all it took, and Crystal was part of a scheme that would end up with Kendra Hatcher with a bullet in her head. She became the driver who would take the gunman into that parking garage.
Detectives finally understand what happened in the final 24 hours of Kendra Hatcher's life.
On September 2nd, at 10:30 a.m., Brenda and Crystal drop off a BMW at Jose's shop, and they borrow the Jeep. Crystal and Christopher spend that day following Kendra around. From 1 p.m. to 7 p.m., Kendra is working at the Smile Zone. At 7:13 p.m., Christopher and Crystal pull into the parking garage where they wait for Kendra to show up. And then Kendra texts Ricardo that she's picking up the underwater camera from a friend. At 7:35, Kendra texts Ricardo to let him know she's on the way home. At the same time, Brenda is eating dinner with Jose, who knows nothing. At 7:42 p.m., Kendra is parking her car in her parking space, and Christopher Love approaches her vehicle and shoots her.
He steals her purse to make it look like a robbery.
Right after Christopher shoots Kendra, Crystal drives him to his apartment complex, where he stashes the murder weapon inside his Chrysler. So we have what we need to take Brenda in custody now. But there's a problem.
Right after Brenda's last interview with Dallas police, she fled to Mexico.
Tracking Brenda down in Mexico is a pretty large task. We began working with the FBI to come up with a plan to get her in custody as fast as possible.
And in order to aid in her capture, she was placed on the 10 most wanted list.
With a $100,000 reward tacked on her head, police are very interested in finding out just where in Mexico Brenda is. It takes police 6 months, but they finally track her down. She's with relatives, family in Mexico, but she surrenders peacefully when they finally arrive and find her at their house.
I fly with 2 other FBI agents to Mexico City, and we bring Brenda Delgado back to the U.S.
31-year-old Brenda Delgado is tried and convicted of capital murder in Dallas.
Brenda was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
And for Brenda's hired driver, Crystal Cortez, the court sentences her to 35 years. Brenda's triggerman, Christopher Love, receives the death penalty for shooting Kendra Hatcher in her prime.
Closure and at least give them justice.
Kendra Hatcher, who had so much promise and had so much to offer, had her whole life in front of her, and she's just gone because of jealousy.
Holidays won't be the same, birthdays won't be the same. They lost Kendra. They lost a critical, loving, beautiful member of their family. And nothing can ever replace that.